there for you. Okay, so I think that's enough from me, and I'm going to hand over now to Ian McLean for our first presentation this morning. Ian is the locality manager in the Safeguarding Advice and Referral team for Community Wellbeing in Herefordshire Council, and he's going to speak about the Herefordshire Safeguarding Adults Board's new self-neglect and hoarding policy. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Angela. So hello everyone, my name's Ian. Ian McLean. So I'm based in Plough Lane in Hereford. So going to look at the new self-neglect and hoarding policy. Actually, the first thing I want to say is that self-neglect comes in lots of different aspects, and so we're going to have some examples, but if any of you have been working with adults for any length of time, you'll know that you could well have come across a situation where someone that you're concerned they're self-neglecting, and it'd be very different from the example given, and that is you know, par for the course. So don't be too focused on the examples. It's a huge variety. So could we have the next slide, please? And possibly because of the variety of types of self-neglect, actually the statutory definition is quite vague. It's quite all-encompassing. And so the Care and Support Statutory Guidance 2020 states self-neglect covers a wide range of behaviour, neglecting to care for one's personal hygiene, health, or surroundings, and includes behaviour such as hoarding, but it does not give specific details. Could I quickly go to the next slide, please? This is actually I found this breakdown quite helpful, actually, because it sort of highlights 3 of the areas where self-neglect can occur and some of the potential consequences. So it could be a lack of self-care to an extent that it threatens their personal health and safety. It could include failure to attend to their living environments to the extent that it becomes hazardous to self or others. Fire risk is mentioned, it's a big one. Infestation, lack of sanitation. And actually that poor environment is a key, one of the big aspects where many are concerned about a person living in a living situation like that. And tied to these two is a failure to seek help or access services to meet their critical health and social care needs. It's often an interplay of these elements that really mean that professionals get very concerned for a woman or man who is self-neglecting. Next slide, please. And so self-neglect is intrinsically complex and challenging. I smile to myself and smile out loud because I'm very aware of how when 4 of us in adult social care get together, we have very different views of self-neglect. So it is an area that actually needs discussion. And I always say half of safeguarding is talking, because there's so many different perspectives. So do talk to someone else when you've met someone and you're concerned about self-neglect. Talk to someone else, talk to a colleague or phone safeguarding team, and talk through what the situation you found. So self-neglect can be a complex and challenging issue for practitioners to address. It can include a range of behaviours that we find almost inexplicable, and so we can't explain why the person is doing this or not done this, and not least because of difficulties in striking a balance between respecting a person's right to autonomy and fulfilling the statutory duty of care to protect their health and well-being. And so this interplay, this balancing act is a key element, always open for discussion, and have we got it right when we're seeking to support a woman or man who is self-neglecting. Next slide, please. Thanks. Just to say a bit of background, and some of these figures may at first seem a bit striking, but up to now, self-neglect has nearly always gone to the safeguarding team. And so up to now, in recent times, so here we've got data for just 9 months, actually, 425 concerns of self-neglect raised to adult safeguarding. We're wanting to shape that a bit, actually, with this new policy, and not jump to adult safeguarding, but to start with an explicit aspiration towards working cooperatively with a woman or man. Because of these 425 concerns, 21 were progressed to an adult safeguarding inquiry. And so that's not a very large percentage at all. So it's less than 5%. Now that doesn't mean we just didn't do anything with the others. And so where a concern was raised but did not progress to a safeguard inquiry, quite often we do go to a strength-based assessment, which a Care Act assessment under the Care Act, Section 9 assessment, because it's Section 9 of the Care Act. And we locally call it a strength-based assessment. We want to have a sense of what the person's aspirations are, what's going well in their life, as well as where they may need support or additional actions being taken. So it may be in a Care Act assessment that does go on. That does happen a lot. It could be signposting to other services. And there are some times when we have phoned people where there's a concern about self-neglecting. We've talked to them. And actually, we don't have a sense of active risk in the person's life. Yes, they could be doing several other things. So they could be, not personal hygiene may have been neglected by that woman or man. Their home may well be in an aspect of poor repair, but they're getting out and they're active. They actually have no care and support needs that adult social care would look to, and they're able to manage their own situation. And so sometimes early on in a person's situation where they first come in contact with services, we may not literally we won't rush in. But we always have to be a bit careful with self-neglect because of this last bullet point here. It has been self-neglect is a major theme of safeguarding adult reviews, both nationally across England and also in terms of Herefordshire Safeguarding Adults Board did a thematic review, and self-neglect was a very strong aspect of that thematic review. So self-neglect is an area that always consumes professional time because of the difficulty in getting it right. So it is a very fine balancing act. Now, I think there was a question. Shall I take the question in the chat there?
Yes, because please, from Joe.
How many of these concerns were from various agencies, officers about the same person, e.g. from environmental health, police, fire? We would probably struggle to give a clear account of that in terms of, we'll have to do a manual search, which would be quite laborious. But do we get repeat referrals? Yes, we do. And so some of these would be repeat referrals about a person. And sometimes the referrals build up over literally years, actually. A bit for the reason that I've said, that sometimes you visit a person and you're concerned. But at that time, they're able to manage it and they're expressing, yes, my house isn't in a great state, and they say whatever they're going to say. And actually, they are, in many ways, independent. Now, do they have care and support needs? I need to say a support need can include mental health. And so do they have a mental health issue? Well, they may do. But it may not be a mental health issue such that it materially impacts their ability to live their life. It's always a fine aspect, and so but if we can work with a person and start to talk to them about the situation early rather than later, and then we can have a sense of change as well. It's good if we have a sense of any changes in a person's situation, and so we can get then we can put it to the woman or man about our concerns. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give one example. As I said earlier, many here will have worked with a woman or man who self-neglects, and it could be very different to this account. And so this is a male. He's in his late 60s. He's been living in a family home by himself for some time, and sometimes it's a parents who've died, and the person's still living there and so there's immediately a really important connection to that property, to that location. The home is in a significant disrepair. There can be multiple issues, and there's several cases we have where there's plumbing and electricity issues, as in little or no running water, or key aspects. The toilet's not working, and little or no electricity. The home can be cluttered with a range of broken items, and in this case, I've known men who had a former profession, and it's just still got loads of items from when they used to work, and that they could have been added to over time. For this particular man, he started to develop leg sores, and he's struggling to get out to purchase food, and we become aware of him having some falls as well. And this particular man, he's resistant to most professionals, but he actually engaged with district nurses, and he just wants the district nurses to carry on, even when his leg sores have finished. Can you just pop in? But for everyone else, he's saying no. He's saying go away. But this is just one example, and in a short while, hopefully, we'll get a sense of some of the other situations. Thanks very much. Can I move on? So the new policy, which is really pleased that it's being launched. It's the guidance for all of us who have contact with women or men who persistently self-neglect, which places them at risk of significant harm, and aims to support good practice. It will be a pathway to provide support, and this policy applies to all practitioners, and so that can include paid staff as well as volunteers. And we do want to say there's no wrong door, so if you send something to safeguarding and we feel it's not really safeguarding, don't worry. We'll just work on it first from a collaborative perspective, from advice and referral team, and we'll seek to make contact with the woman or man. Now, in terms of the contact with the woman or man, one element we may be, and hopefully we will be doing, is making contact with the referrer. And saying if you've raised this, you must have some contact with the person, and can we make the most of this in terms of our contact with that person? Can I have next slide, please? So the policy provides definitions. It provides details and applications of legal frameworks. Again, there's some examples in the policy. There's a really interesting case law example that went to the Court of Protection. Information on how to work with risk and harm, and considering causes of a person's self-neglect. And I appreciate I sort of blow hot and cold about causation, because it's fascinating. It is fascinating. And so there's a bit of a discussion about causation, and there's some things suggested as possible causes for a person's self-neglect. And then finally, Herefordshire pathways is what we're doing locally. Okay, thanks. If we could, I'm conscious of time already. Great. So in a minute, we're going to go to Mentimeter, and and I want, and I'm going to ask you to tap in, if possible, 3 your thoughts around. You've met a person who you're concerned about self-neglecting. What 3 things are uppermost in your mind? If you can think of 3 things, what 3 things are uppermost? You've met this person, you're concerned about it. What 3 things are either the first actions or your first thoughts or your first considerations? If you could think of 3, and if you could distill those 3 into 3 short sentences. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Angela, and she's going to take us through the Mentimeter techniques. So, Angela.
Yes, and I'm just going to pull this slide down now so I can pull up the Mentimeter responses, but I've popped that URL and the code in the chat. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that down now. Should I move over to the responses, Ian?
Just hold it for a minute longer, because
Okay.
I know that when I first used Mentimeter, it took me a minute just to grasp. I'll open up a web page, go to Mentimeter, put that code in. Just took me
there's an
a
answer.
minute. There's an answer. One answer so far.
And you can answer a couple times. So you can put your first answer and then a second and a third, rather than doing them all at once if you like. The URL and the code are on the top of the page now again.
Oh, good. They're starting to come in now. Yeah, do you want to? Right, so a few of the responses already great. Capacity and any other agencies involved. So two key considerations. Ask them how they are. Talk to them. A key aspect, actually. Speak to colleagues, other professionals. Absolutely. Do they see a problem? Does a person see a great consideration there? Contact safeguarding lead. MDT meeting with other professionals involved. Safeguarding referral, assess family support. Good points. Is this impacting on others? Good question. Core adult safeguarding team for advice, notified GP. Is the person safe? Key consideration. Do they have capacity? Absolutely. Do they have any existing support? Great points there. Do they have support around them? Yeah, that's really valid. Have they a social worker, someone else involved? Are they depressed? So that's some of the. Is there some slightly lower, Angela?
Sorry, I was just wondering how to do that. Just a moment. Remember last time that we did this, Ian? It was scrolling them down, but yeah, it wasn't doing that just now. Let me try that again. Oh, here we go.
That's great. That's great.
A little bit fiddly, but I'm just doing it manually.
Right. A couple of people are written. Talk to them. Absolutely. Talk to them. Address immediate safety. What support do they have, or could they draw on? Family, etc. Speak to them and ask if they are okay. Do they need any support? Raise it in-house. Do they understand any risks? Talk to neighbours and family. How safe is a person? Speak to colleagues. Talk to them. To another professional, preferably health. Keep visiting. Mental capacity was written there. Any supporting services involved, any immediate risk. Fire safety referral. Contact Herefordshire Safeguarding Board. Inquire what support, help, assistance a person may like to receive. Speak to family, neighbours to see if they need help as a result of impacts on them. If you've got an individual in mind, I'll say talk to adult social care rather than the Herefordshire Safeguarding Board, if you don't mind me saying. Try to understand the history and background, identify quick wins. Are they safe? Any current support? Ask them what they want. Do they have capacity? Multi-agency approaches. There's a history of other safeguarding concerns, and identify risks and sort of place them in a scheme. Low, medium, high risks. So actually, lots of comments. So some of the key, actually, lots that said how talk to them and engaging with the woman or man is crucial. We can't get anywhere without that. I really like the comments around risk, having a strong sense of where is the risk, what is the risk, and actually also some said, do they see it as risky? The issue of mental capacity, absolutely have a sense of is the person able to understand what they're doing. Actually, when the person lacks, because some people, they're not aware of when they're living alone, they're not aware of the onset of a dementia or a confusion. For so many people, they're not aware of it themselves. If you visit someone who has had very little involvement from health or colleagues, and you become aware, and you're thinking this person actually has some elements of confusion, then actually we can work with that quite smoothly, and hopefully support the man or woman. Mental capacity has many different angles to it, and as you know, every decision is context specific, question specific. Comment there: show curiosity, interest, and concern. So actually, that's a really good way of putting it. Most of us like people showing an interest in us, and one of the comments in the self-neglect policy is that sometimes relationships have been neglected. I thought that was a nice little line there. And so show interest in the person, talk around it, talk around the matter. But some other points here: ask them if they have worries. Again, get the person's perspective of their situation. And I like actually about checking out support, checking what other professionals are involved. That can be a key thing. Quite often, I don't want to say it all the time, there is a professional the person would engage with, and there's other professionals the person doesn't like for whatever reason. So that's a really important aspect to identify if you can from your first contact with the woman or man. And so lots of good points. I think that's now. There's just want to check the chats. No other questions. So I just want to. We've got 5 minutes still, and I know there's lots happening later. So if we could just have 5 minutes, but that's all, I'm afraid. Any questions or comments even around self-neglect? Could I just invite that?
I'll just pull the slides back up, Ian. I think there was the pathway as well after this.
All right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just have to move to the right.
So just actually a couple of other slides to go through. So the Herefordshire multi-agency safeguarding pathway. So concerned about an individual neglecting themselves, their home, or rough sleeping. Discuss the concerns with the person. Obtain consent to make a referral. Let them know what the planned next actions are. Unless risk of significant harm to the person or others. In most cases, self-neglect, I've only really known risk to the person themselves. But there could be, there's variation. And so come to the advice and referral team. We'll seek to, and we may draw on you to make contact, or may draw on the referrer to make contact with the individual to check their options. If the person consents to support, great, and we can do a strength-based assessment if they have care and support needs. If no care and support needs identified, then it could just be signposting and possibly no further action. So it's those sort of situations where the person is still physically active, and even though the house may be in disrepair, even though there could be aspects around personal hygiene, then they are getting by and they seem able to manage the risks themselves. If the person does not consent, are there significant safeguarding concerns? If so, the adult safeguarding team will look at the concerns, and it could be that a safeguarding inquiry is started and sent to a locality team. Next slide, please. If there are no significant firms and the adult does not consent to referral, a person with capacity to understand the risks has the right to refuse support. And refusal does not mean that all intervention stops. Multi-agency plan put in place to build relationships and offer support. Both in terms of any referring agency, if there's a change, especially, they can always come back to us if there's a deterioration, or if the person's outlook is changed. If the person does not want any action taken, it may be reasonable not to intervene further, provided no one else is at risk. Vital interests are not compromised, so no immediate risk of death or life-changing harm. Decisions are explained and recorded, and adult social care hopefully will inform the referring agency. So there's a I don't want that to put you off referring in, because as I say, sometimes we get a sense of the person's situation getting more challenging, starting to develop active risks in one sense or another, especially if a person gets older and develops, or any age actually, starts to develop health complications, complex health matters. Next slide, please. We do seek to apply the principles of making safeguarding personal and strength-based practice in all that we're doing. It's a key element of the whole safeguarding ethos, the landscape. So we start with the assumption that the person is best placed to judge their well-being, and so their view is crucial. Pay close attention to the individual's views, wishes, feelings and beliefs. Preventing or delaying development of needs for care and support and reducing needs that exist. Will they accept, for example, referral to a fire service so that some risks that there can be better managed, risks of fire? Will they accept some level of telecare in case they